Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My name is Raymond Ellis. I am 33 years old, and 3 weeks ago, I walked out of my own wedding. I did not yell. I did not throw anything. I did not make a speech. I just looked at my best man, whispered for him to start the car, and walked quietly down the aisle while my fiancée held her phone in front of her face and talked to a live stream. People always imagine the end of a relationship arriving with some dramatic fight in a kitchen at midnight or a tearful conversation on a couch. Mine arrived at an outdoor venue just outside Charlotte, North Carolina, with white folding chairs, soft music, and my almost wife turning her back on me so her followers could see her better in the golden hour light. I had been with Alicia Warren for 4 years and engaged to her for 1. When we met, she had just started experimenting with social media content, posting lifestyle videos, little day-in-the-life clips, and fashion hauls from discount malls around the city. Back then, she had maybe 1,500 followers, a hobby she nurtured after her shifts at a local boutique. I was already working full-time as an architect at a mid-sized firm downtown, making about $95,000 a year. I remember our first date clearly. Coffee at a spot in uptown Charlotte, the kind of place with plants in every corner and mismatched mugs. She kept her phone on the table, face down at first, then face up, then in her hand. Even then, I noticed. She laughed when the screen lit up and said she just needed to reply to a couple of messages because engagement was everything. I did not understand what that really meant yet. Over the years, her following grew. Her videos got more polished. She learned angles, transitions, lighting tricks. Brands started emailing. First small things, free candles, skincare samples, clothes in exchange for posts, then actual money. By the time we had been together 3 years, she had close to 180,000 followers across platforms and was making somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000 a month from sponsorships and partnerships. She quit the boutique and started calling herself a full-time content creator. I was proud of her in my own way. I knew plenty of people who talked about their dreams and never did anything. Alicia worked hard, filming, editing, posting, replying to comments late into the night while I dozed on the couch beside her. The phone that bothered me on our first date became almost like a third person in our relationship. There were warning signs I chose not to take seriously. I remember one evening in particular. It was a rainy Thursday, the kind of night that made the city feel muted. I had cooked dinner, baked salmon, rice and vegetables, and lit a candle on the table in our apartment. I had been looking forward to a quiet meal all day. Alicia came out of the bedroom, already holding her phone, saying she had to just capture this vibe. She propped the phone against a glass, hit record, and suddenly her voice shifted. It went higher, brighter, as she welcomed her followers, angled the camera toward the food, and asked everyone what they were having for dinner. As the salmon cooled on our plates, she talked to strangers on the internet about sauce preferences. When she finally set the phone down, I said, "Could we try having just one dinner this week without the phone?" She sighed, rolled her eyes, and said I was being dramatic. "This is my job, Ray. You go to the office. I pick up my phone. Same thing." I let it go. Still, there were beautiful moments. When she was not on camera, Alicia could be gentle and funny and very present. We drove down to Atlanta one weekend for a short trip, and she forgot her portable light at home. The hotel room was dim, and she grumbled that shooting would not be good. When I suggested we just enjoy the weekend without content, she frowned for a second, then shrugged. That trip turned into one of my favorite memories. We walked through neighborhoods, tried food trucks, danced in our hotel room to old R&B. Only once did she pick up her phone, and that was to take a quick photo of us together. No filter, no retakes. Just a simple picture. I kept it as my lock screen for months. That Alicia, the one who laughed with her head thrown back and forgot about angles, was the woman I thought I was going to marry. The proposal happened on a cold evening in December at a small park near our apartment. I had planned it carefully. I asked my friend Leon to hide nearby and take photos. I had a ring in my coat pocket, my hands clammy even though the air was sharp. When I dropped to one knee, Alicia gasped. For a split second, her hands went to her mouth, and her eyes filled with tears. Then she reached for her phone. "Wait, wait," she said, smiling at me but fumbling in her bag. "I have to record this." I stayed on my knee while she set the phone up against a bench and adjusted it 3 times to make sure we were both in frame. My legs were starting to burn. Only when the little red light blinked did she turn back to me and say, "Okay, go." I pushed away the tiny sting of hurt and told myself it was harmless, that it was just a sign of the times. She said yes, threw her arms around my neck, and later posted a beautifully edited clip of us under fairy lights. The comments were full of heart emojis and relationship goals. My parents, both old school and private, were not used to having their family moments available for thousands of strangers to dissect. Planning the wedding brought everything into sharper focus. Unlike my parents' simple church ceremony in Baltimore years ago, ours was going to be a modern, curated event. Alicia called it content gold. Every decision ran through what she called her brand. The venue had to be aesthetically pleasing. She wanted an outdoor space with lots of greenery, white chairs, twinkle lights, and a view for sunset. We toured 4 different spots around Charlotte before she finally picked one with a big oak tree, a little pond, and a pergola draped in vines that would look good on camera. She talked about color palette cohesion, while I quietly tallied costs in my head. Flowers were another battleground. I would have been fine with something simple and elegant, but Alicia spent hours scrolling through inspiration photos, talking about florals that would pop on camera and photograph well. The florist nodded along, suggesting roses, peonies, greenery walls, and an arch that would frame us perfectly in the photographs. When I asked about price, the florist gave a number that made my stomach flip. Alicia squeezed my hand and said, "It is once in a lifetime, Ray. And think about the content." The phrase, "think about the content," became a refrain, something she said when she wanted to justify an expensive choice. I started joking under my breath that I was marrying not just her, but her audience. The guest list became more complicated than I ever expected. At first, we wrote down family, close friends, and a few coworkers. Then Alicia started adding other names. Content creators she knew online, people she had collaborated with, a photographer she admired, a makeup artist she had only met once but wanted to tag. "They will all post about it," she said. "It will be like free promotion for us." The word "us" did a lot of heavy lifting. To make room, she trimmed some of her cousins and a couple of her old friends from high school, saying they would understand. She suggested I cut a few of my coworkers whose names she had asked me to repeat. That was our first big argument in months. "They are part of my life," I said. "I work with them every day." She replied, "This is not a networking event for your job. This is my brand." She caught herself and added, "Our wedding, I mean." But I had heard the slip. I kept most of my list. We compromised by lowering the number of plus ones. I went along with almost everything, because I thought that was what compromise looked like. I did not care about the color of the napkins, the shape of the centerpieces, or the style of the cake. I cared about the vows, the part where it was just the two of us promising each other a life. My single, firm request came one evening when we were lying on the couch, laptops open, comparing catering quotes. I closed mine and said, "I need something from you." She looked up, genuinely curious. I told her I wanted the actual ceremony to be phone-free. 30 minutes with no devices. No guests holding up phones. No live streams. No selfies at the altar. Just us, the officiant, our families, and the words. I explained that I wanted to remember that part with my own eyes, not through someone's camera lens. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. "We can do that. Professional photographer only, but no phones during the ceremony. That could even be chic. I will tell people it is intentional." I felt a weight lift from my chest. I took her at her word. My family has a tradition around vows. On my mother's side, every couple has their vows written in calligraphy on handmade paper and framed in matching wooden frames. My grandparents' frames hang in their dining room in Baltimore, yellowed slightly, but still beautiful. My parents' frames are in their hallway. When I was a child, I used to stand there and read the lines, not understanding half the phrases but feeling the weight of them. It mattered to me to continue that tradition. So a few weeks before the wedding, I found an artist in Charlotte who specialized in calligraphy. I emailed her our vows, mine finished, Alicia's draft that she had emailed me for feedback, and asked her to write them out. The cost was $850 for both pieces, framed in matching oak. I did not tell Alicia the price because I knew she would ask if we could collab with the artist instead of paying, and this felt personal. When I picked them up the day before the wedding, my chest tightened. They were beautiful. I brought them to the venue to be displayed at the reception. The plan was for our parents to present them to us after the ceremony. The wedding day itself was gorgeous in that almost unreal way. The sky over the venue outside Charlotte was a soft, cloudless blue. The staff was moving quickly, straightening chairs, adjusting floor arrangements. I arrived early with Leon, my best man, who kept making stupid jokes to keep me from overthinking things. My mom, Denise, hugged me so tight I could barely breathe and whispered, "If you want to run, this is your last chance," then laughed to let me know she was only half serious. My dad, Harold, clasped my shoulder and said, "You picked her, son. Stand by that." I nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and nerves. Somewhere in a separate room, Alicia was getting her makeup done, her hair styled, her dress carefully zipped. I imagined her smiling into a mirror, surrounded by her bridesmaids, her cousin Latrice, her longtime friend Maya, her coworker-turned-friend Nicole, and her maid of honor, Raven, who had been her closest confidant since college. Guests arrived in a slow, steady stream, filling the seats under the oak tree. I watched a few of them pull out their phones, taking pictures of the flowers and the pond, and remembered our agreement. Before the ceremony began, the officiant, a calm man in his 50s named Pastor Williams, made an announcement asking everyone kindly to put their phones away until the reception. "The couple has requested an unplugged ceremony," he said. "They want you fully present in this moment." I saw a few people glance at each other, then slide their phones back into purses and pockets. Leon leaned over and whispered, "You got your wish, Ray." I exhaled, feeling grateful. The music started. I stood at the altar with Leon beside me, my heart beating fast but steady. The bridesmaids walked down the aisle one by one, all in a deep green that Alicia had called emerald, but not too bright. Then the music shifted, and everyone stood. Alicia appeared at the end of the aisle, arm in arm with her father, Charles. She looked stunning in a fitted white dress that flared at the bottom, small crystals catching the light. Her veil trailed softly behind her. For a moment, everything was still. Her eyes met mine, and I felt everything we had been through. The first date, the late nights, the arguments, the laughter, converge in that look. As she walked toward me, the only sound was the music and the rustle of fabric. No phones were raised. It felt like a small miracle. When she reached the altar, Alicia gave me a quick, bright smile and squeezed my hands. Pastor Williams welcomed everyone, spoke briefly about commitment and partnership, and then indicated it was time for the vows. I went first. I had written mine over weeks, revising them late at night while Alicia edited videos. I talked about choosing each other not just on big days, but on ordinary Tuesday nights when nothing special was happening. I spoke about building a life together, about patience, about the soft work of loving someone when there was no audience, no camera, no applause. As I spoke, I saw Alicia's eyes fill with tears. I believed they were from joy. When I finished, Pastor Williams nodded approvingly and turned to her. "Alicia," he said, "now your vows." She took a breath, smiled up at me, and began to read from the folded paper in her hand. "Raymond, from the moment we met, you have been my anchor and my safe place," she said. She continued for 3 sentences, maybe 4, and then paused. Her brow furrowed slightly. I thought she was overwhelmed. Instead, she reached with one hand into her bouquet and pulled out her phone. For a second, my mind simply refused to process what I was seeing. The phone looked out of place against the white flowers, sleek and dark. She tapped the screen with practiced fingers. I heard a soft ripple of murmur move through the guests. Pastor Williams cleared his throat gently. "Alicia," he said, "we are in the middle of your vows." She did not look at him. "Hold on one moment," she said, "but not to us." Her eyes were on the screen. "Hold on, everyone. The lighting is perfect right now." My world narrowed to the small rectangle in her hand. Alicia's posture shifted. Her shoulders lifted. Her voice changed as she opened her Livestream application. The bright, genuine emotion I had just seen in her eyes was replaced by a familiar, performative sparkle. "Hey everyone," she said brightly, facing the phone while still standing at the altar beside me. "We're literally at the ceremony right now." She turned slightly so the camera could catch her dress, the flowers, the guests. "Look at this golden hour light," she said, angling the phone to capture the oak tree behind us. Can you all see this? This is the moment you have all been asking about. She laughed in that slightly exaggerated way she reserved for filming. Beside me, Leon muttered under his breath, "You have got to be kidding me," but kept his eyes forward. Pastor Williams tried again, his voice gentle but firm. "Ma'am, we really do need to continue with the ceremony." Alicia waved one hand without taking her eyes off the screen. "1 second," she said. "They have been waiting for this all day." She read the comments that began to scroll in, her eyes flicking back and forth. "Thank you," she said, smiling. "Yes, this is the dress from the sneak peek. Custom, actually." She adjusted her posture to show the beading on the bodice. "Do you all want a venue tour after this?" she asked. "Let me know in the comments." I stood there, my hands slowly falling from where they had been holding hers. My heart thudded dully. She had not looked at me since she pulled out the phone. In that moment, everything about the last 4 years crystallized with painful clarity. Every dinner interrupted for a quick photo. Every date night paused so she could reply to comments. Every private conversation that later appeared in edited form online. I realized that I was not only standing at the altar with my fiancée, I was standing at the altar with her audience. They were the unseen guests she was really talking to. Pastor Williams' voice grew more insistent. "Alicia, please," he said. "We need you to either continue your vows, or we'll have to pause." She gave a frustrated little sigh into the phone and said, "Sorry, everyone, the pastor is rushing us," with a laugh that drew more hearts on the screen. I felt something inside me harden. I turned my head slightly toward Leon. He was watching me, eyebrows raised in a question he did not voice. I leaned closer and whispered, "Start the car." He blinked. "What?" he whispered back, his lips barely moving. "Start the car." I repeated, my voice low and steady. There was a beat of silence in which I thought he might argue. Instead, he nodded once, quietly stepped down from his spot beside me, and walked down the side aisle toward the parking lot. No one noticed. Alicia was narrating the floral arrangements to her followers, panning around slowly. "Look at these details," she said. "They did such an amazing job." Someone in the front row turned their head to watch Leon leave, but then looked back at her phone, trying to understand what the bride was doing. I stood there for another minute, maybe less, maybe more. Time felt strange. Alicia was still talking to her screen, reading compliments about her makeup and dress, answering questions about the brand of her shoes. I watched her face, the way she animated it for the camera. Then, with a kind of quiet clarity I cannot fully explain, I took a step back from the altar. No one moved. I took another step. The rustle of my shoes on the platform was barely audible over Alicia's bright voice. "Babe, where are you?" she started to say, glancing at me for half a second, but a new comment popped up and distracted her. "Oh wait, someone is asking about the cake flavors," she said into the phone, turning slightly to angle the camera toward the dessert table in the distance. I turned my back on the pergola, the flowers, and the woman I'd almost married, and I walked down the aisle past rows of confused guests. I did not look back. I kept my eyes focused on the path ahead, on the line of trees leading to the parking lot. I heard whispers rising behind me, a few chairs scraping softly as people turned to follow my movement with their eyes. My mother's hand flew to her chest. My father half rose from his seat. I walked out from under the oak tree, past the pond, through the small gate at the end of the path. In the parking lot, Leon already had my car pulled up near the exit. The engine was running. He stood outside the driver's side with the door open. "You sure?" he asked, his eyes searching my face. "Yeah," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, flat and final. I got in. He slid into the passenger seat. As I pulled out of the lot, I saw a few guests standing up, looking back and forth between me and the ceremony space. Alicia's voice still floated faintly through the air, talking to her chat. We turned onto the road, and the venue disappeared behind us. That night, I stayed at Leon's apartment on the other side of Charlotte. His girlfriend, Jasmine, had stayed at the wedding and would later tell us how the rest of it had unfolded. For the first couple of hours, though, it was just Leon and me sitting on his couch, a half-empty pizza box on the table, the tuxedo jacket folded over a chair. My phone buzzed relentlessly on the coffee table until I turned it off. Leon did not ask many questions. He just said, "You did what you needed to do," and handed me a glass of water. I lay awake on his couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment she pulled out the phone, the way her voice had changed. My mind shifted between anger and a deep, heavy sadness. I thought about the framed vows waiting at the venue, the one thing I had been truly excited to receive. I did not know then that I would see those frames again, but not in the way I expected. The next morning, when I turned my phone back on, it erupted with notifications. 89 missed calls from Alicia, dozens from her parents, her maid of honor, other guests, text messages, voicemails, emails. My inbox looked like it had been attacked. I listened to a few of the voicemails in order. The first one from Alicia was full of confusion and tears. "Raymond, please answer," she said. "I do not understand what happened. Everyone is asking where you went. Just call me back so we can talk." The next several grew more frantic. By the 10th, her tone hardened into anger. "This is ridiculous," she said. "You left me at our own wedding. Do you know how humiliating that was? Everyone is talking about it. You need to call me now." By the 20th, she had shifted into bargaining. "I'm sorry about the phone thing, okay?" she said. "I was not thinking. We can still do this. The venue might let us reschedule if we explain. Please, let's fix it." I did not call her back. Instead, I called the venue coordinator. Her voice was sympathetic but firm. She explained that from their perspective, the event had taken place. The ceremony had started. The staff had worked. The food had been prepared. There would be no refund. We had paid $12,000 total for the venue, catering, and bar service, split evenly between Alicia and me per our agreement. I had already paid my $6,000. So had she. That money was gone. I also called our landlord, Mrs. Jackson, to explain that the engagement was over and I needed to move out of the 2-bedroom apartment Alicia and I had been sharing. Our lease still had 4 months left. Mrs. Jackson said I could vacate and continue paying my half until the lease ended, or I could find someone to take over my portion. I started looking for a sublet that afternoon. I called my parents next. My mother's voice was soft but unsurprised. "I knew those phones would be a problem someday," she said. "I did not think it would be like this, but I did not see how you could build a life with someone who could not put that thing down." My father asked if I was safe, if there had been any shouting or threats. When I told him I had simply walked away, he was silent for a moment, then said, "You did what you felt was necessary. That is all a man can do." I spent the next 2 days packing wedding gifts back into their boxes and writing short notes to everyone who had given us something. "Due to unforeseen circumstances, the wedding will not be taking place," I wrote over and over. "Thank you for your generosity." I took the boxes to the post office in several trips. The woman behind the counter finally asked, "Everything okay, honey?" I told her yes, because it was easier than explaining. Midweek, Jasmine called Leon to tell us what had happened after we left the venue. According to her, Alicia had continued filming for another 3 minutes before she realized I was gone. The comments on our live stream started asking, "Where is the groom? Why is he walking away?" Someone wrote, "He left." Alicia looked up from the screen, scanned the space around her, and then the color drained from her face. She ended the stream abruptly. There had been chaos, whispered conversations, guests checking on her crying in the bridal suite while Raven tried to console her. Some guests left quietly. Others stayed for the food, since it was already paid for. Jasmine said the atmosphere felt like a wake. "I have never seen anything like it," she told us. "It was like watching a building collapse in slow motion." The real fallout began a few days later. Alicia showed up at my office downtown, demanding to see me. Building security called my extension. "There is a woman here who says she is your fiancée," the guard said. "She is very upset." I took a breath and said, "She is not my fiancée anymore. Please tell her I am not available and ask her to leave." They escorted her out of the lobby. Later, I found out she had recorded the entire interaction from outside the building and posted it on her social media with a caption about being silenced and not getting to tell her side. In her version of events, I was controlling and jealous of her success. She wrote that I had always hated her career, that I had humiliated her at the ceremony because I could not handle her having followers. She described the live stream as a brief moment of sharing joy that I had weaponized to escape a commitment I had never truly wanted. Her followers flooded the comments with messages calling me abusive, insecure, fragile. Some of them found my professional email address. I started receiving messages from strangers accusing me of emotional abuse, of trying to isolate Alicia from her supportive community. One person wrote that they were going to contact my employer, I dismissed it until my boss, Mr. Caldwell, called me into his office. He closed the door, folded his hands, and said, "Someone sent an email about you. They said you were dangerous and had abandoned your fiancée at the altar." He shrugged slightly. "Obviously, your personal life is your business, and I do not put much stock in anonymous messages. But this could be a distraction. Can you keep whatever is going on out of the office?" I nodded and told him I would handle it. Walking back to my desk, I felt anger rise hot in my chest. It was one thing for Alicia to frame the story online to protect herself. It was another to let her followers attempt to damage my job. Her family got involved too. Her father, Charles, called me one evening. His voice was low and serious. "Son," he said, "I think you two need to talk this out. She made a mistake, sure, but marriage is about forgiveness. You cannot throw away 4 years over one moment." I replied, "She stopped our wedding mid-vows to Livestream. She did exactly what I asked her not to do at the one time it mattered most." He said, "She is young. The internet is important to her generation." I almost laughed. "I'm only 4 years older than her," I said. "We are from the same generation. This is not about age. It is about priorities." He sighed. "You are really going to end it over a phone?" he asked. I said, "I am ending it because she prioritized strangers online over the person standing in front of her on her wedding day." There was nothing he could say to that. He told me I would regret it one day. I hung up feeling strangely calm. The issue of the vow frames came up that same week. I remember them suddenly one afternoon and called the venue. The coordinator told me that Alicia had already picked them up along with other decorations. That hit me harder than I expected. Those vows meant something to me. I had spent weeks writing mine, thinking about every sentence. I texted Alicia, keeping my message brief. "I need to pick up my things from the apartment," I wrote. "Please let me know when you will not be there." She replied almost immediately, "Our apartment." Then, "You do not get to just take things. We need to talk first." I wrote back, "We do not. I'm getting my belongings. Give me a day and time you will be out. I will not make a scene." She responded, "Everything here is ours. You cannot just take whatever you want." I listed specific items. My clothes, my books, my grandfather's chess set, my diplomas, and the framed vows. She insisted the vow frames were part of the wedding and therefore shared. "They have my vows too. You cannot have them," she wrote. Realizing that this would likely turn into a shouting match if I tried to handle it alone, I contacted a lawyer. The first consultation was free. I sat in a modest office in a small building in Charlotte across from a man named Mr. Coleman, who listened with raised eyebrows as I explained the situation. When I described the live stream at the altar, he actually chuckled and then quickly apologized. "I am sorry," he said. "It is just, this is the kind of thing people joke about, not something that really happens." He told me I had every right to access my personal property at the apartment since my name was on the lease. He advised me to call the police non-emergency line and request a civil standby, so an officer could be present while I retrieve my things. "Make a list beforehand," he said, "and if you have receipts for those frames, bring them. It will help if there is a dispute." I thanked him and left with a strange mix of embarrassment and relief. 2 days later, I stood in the hallway of the apartment building waiting for an officer from the Charlotte Police Department to arrive. When Officer Bryant showed up, he was professional and calm. We walked up together. Alicia opened the door before we could knock, her expression immediately sour when she saw the uniform. "This is harassment," she said. "You brought the police to our home." The officer said, "Ma'am, he is on the lease. He is here to get his personal property. I'm just here to keep the peace. Are you going to stop him from entering?" She crossed her arms, standing in the bedroom doorway as I moved through the place that had been ours. Everything felt both familiar and foreign. I saw the couch where we had watched movies, the kitchen where we had cooked. On the wall, there was an empty spot where the vow frames had been. She had moved them into the bedroom. It took 2 hours to sort through everything. Every item became an argument. "That shirt is mine," she said at one point, pointing to a button-down I was folding. "You bought it with my money when we went shopping." I calmly replied that I had the bank statement to show it was from my account. She glared but said nothing. She tried to claim my books because we had read some of them together. She said my grandfather's chess set was a gift to us, although my grandfather's handwriting was still visible inside the lid with my name written next to the date. Each time, Officer Bryant asked a simple question, "Who bought this?" or "Who does this originally belong to?" If I could show proof, or if it was clearly mine before the relationship, he told me to take it. When we got to the vow frames, Alicia's voice rose. They were leaning against the wall near her dresser. "Those are mine," she said. "My vows are in there. You are not taking them." I replied, "Mine are in there too. I commissioned them. I paid for them. I have the receipt." I showed Officer Brian the email on my phone. He looked at it and then nodded. "He is entitled to them," he said. "He paid for them." Alicia let out a scream, raw and full of fury. "You cannot do this," she said. "Those are part of the wedding you ruined." I picked up both frames and set them gently into a box. When I finally carried the last box down to my car, I felt drained but oddly lighter. I drove to the small studio apartment I had just rented on the other side of town. First month plus deposit had cost me $2,400, more than I wanted to spend, but it was mine alone. No shared lease, no joint decor. I carried in my boxes and leaned the vow frames against the wall. Later that night, after assembling a cheap bed frame and setting up my clothes in the tiny closet, I hung my vow frame on the only empty stretch of wall big enough to hold it. Seeing my words there, written in elegant script, felt strange. They had been meant for a moment that never came. Alicia's frame sat in the back of my closet, face turned toward the wall. I did not know what to do with it yet. 2 weeks after the wedding that was not, Alicia escalated in a new way. She posted a 15-minute video telling what she called her truth about our relationship. According to her, I had been emotionally abusive for years. She said I had tried to isolate her from her friends, that I resented her community online, that I controlled her finances. None of that was true. We had always kept separate bank accounts. She explained my decision to walk out as something I had been planning, claiming I had been looking for an excuse to leave and had seized on her short, harmless live stream as an opportunity. Her followers were quick to defend her. "You deserve better," they wrote. "He was intimidated by your success." Some messaged me directly, calling me names. A few threatened to expose me, although I was not sure what they thought they could expose beyond the fact that I refused to stand still while my wedding vows became content. Her mother, Gloria, showed up at my new apartment one evening just after 7. I had not given her the address. I still did not know how she found it. When I opened the door and saw her standing there holding her purse tightly, I felt a tired resignation settle over me. "We need to talk about my daughter," she said. I replied, "No, we do not," but she stepped slightly closer, her eyes shining with anger and pain. "You humiliated her in front of everyone," she said. "Do you understand what you did to her career?" I blinked. "Her career?" I said. "She stopped our wedding to live stream. That is what happened to her career." Gloria shook her head. She was sharing a beautiful moment. "You made it about your ego. You walked away." I said, "I made our wedding about us." She made it about her followers. Gloria continued. "She has lost sponsorships. Brands are dropping her. People are calling her unprofessional. This is not just about love. It is about her livelihood." I replied, "That is not my responsibility. She made choices. She decided to pull out her phone during her vows. If that has consequences, they are hers." Gloria's eyes filled with tears. "She loves you," she said. "She made a mistake. Can you not forgive her?" I thought about the dinners interrupted, the private arguments turned into vague posts, the way she had filmed me half asleep on the couch once and posted it without asking, captioned with a joke about tired men. I said, I forgave her every time she put her phone before dinner, before conversations, before our anniversaries. I forgave her every time she used our life as material. I cannot forgive her for doing it at our wedding. Gloria stared at me for a long moment, then said, "You are throwing away a woman who loved you." I replied, "I am walking away from someone who loved her audience more than me." She left without another word. The legal threat came next. A few days later, I was served with papers for small claims court. Alicia was suing me for $8,200. The breakdown was precise: $6,000 for her half of the wedding costs, $1,200 for emotional damages, and $1,000 for lost income from the content she claimed she could have made if the wedding had gone as planned. I took the papers straight to Mr. Coleman. He skimmed them and shook his head, barely suppressing a smile. "She has no case," he said. "You cannot sue someone for leaving a wedding that is not bound by any legal contract yet. She paid her portion of the venue and services. You paid yours. She is trying to get you to reimburse her for money she decided to spend just like you did. He explained that there was no legal basis for emotional damages in this situation, and that lost content income was speculative at best. Still, we prepared for court. His fee ended up being $1,200 in total, which I paid out of my savings. It was not a small amount, but it felt necessary. Meanwhile, the consequences of her public narrative began to catch up with her. Her follower count dipped by around 15,000. Not a massive collapse, but enough to notice. People who had once praised her started leaving comments like, "Maybe put the phone down sometimes," and "This makes relationships look like props." Some unfollowed quietly. Others stayed and criticized. She posted tearful videos about brands not standing by women during difficult times, framing the sponsorship losses as unfair punishment. I knew she had lost at least 2 deals because she posted about it in vague terms, saying a major brand had pulled out of a campaign. Her maid of honor, Raven, stopped talking to her after the wedding. Through mutual friends, I heard that Raven felt betrayed, not just for what happened at the ceremony, but for the way Alicia had distorted events online. 3 of the bridesmaids backed out of future commitments with her, saying they could not trust her to be present at their own weddings. The vow frames became a topic online too. Alicia posted a picture of the blank spot on her wall where they had been and wrote about how I had stolen her wedding vows and robbed her of memories. People sympathized with her, imagining me sneaking into the apartment and taking something sentimental just to hurt her. My lawyer advised me to keep documenting everything, screenshots of posts, dates and times of messages, every voicemail. If this becomes relevant in court, we will want a record, he said. In quieter moments, when I sat alone in my studio with the hum of the refrigerator in the background, I would look at my vow frame and feel a dull ache. Those words still felt true to me, even if I no longer had anyone to say them to. My financial life had taken a hit. Between my half of the wedding, the new apartment, and the legal fees, I calculated that ending the relationship had cost me about $10,450. $6,000 for the wedding, $1,200 for the lawyer, $2,400 for the new place, and $850 for the vow frames. I wrote the numbers down one night on a yellow legal pad and stared at them. It was not a small sum. It was a used car, a chunk off a mortgage, a sizable investment. And yet, the more I thought about what my life would have been like if I had stayed, if I had swallowed my discomfort at the altar and pretended that stopping mid-vows to stream was no big deal, the more that number started to feel strangely small. The small claims court date arrived about 6 weeks after the wedding. The courtroom was plain, with beige walls and wooden benches. A few older cases went ahead of us, landlord-tenant disputes, minor car accidents. When our turn came, Alicia sat at one table with a lawyer she had hired, a young man in a slim suit who specialized in social media-related contracts. I sat at the other with Mr. Coleman. Alicia's father sat behind her, his face drawn. She glanced at me briefly when we walked in, her expression a mixture of hurt and defiance. I felt my chest tighten, but kept my face neutral. When the judge, a woman named Judge Harris, called our case, Alicia's lawyer stood and launched into an argument about an implied contract I had allegedly breached by walking out of the ceremony. He said we had planned the event together, that she had spent money in reliance on my promise to go through with it, and that by leaving, I had caused her financial harm. Mr. Coleman responded calmly. "Your Honor," he said, "the plaintiff stopped the ceremony to initiate a live broadcast on social media, despite a prior agreement with my client that there would be no phones during the ceremony itself. My client left a ceremony that had already been disrupted." Judge Harris turned to Alicia directly. "Did you stop the ceremony to use your phone?" she asked. Alicia shifted in her seat. "I was sharing a meaningful moment with my community," she said. "It was less than 5 minutes. I just wanted to include them." The judge repeated, "Did you or did you not interrupt your wedding ceremony to film yourself?" After a pause, Alicia said, "Yes, but I was going to continue my vows. He did not give me a chance. He just left. He abandoned me." Judge Harris nodded slowly. "You made a choice," she said. "He made one too." She turned back to the file in front of her. "There is no legal basis for your claim for emotional damages or lost income. As for the wedding costs, you entered into contracts with vendors, and he paid his share. Judgment for the defendant. Case dismissed." Alicia's shoulders slumped. Tears welled in her eyes. Her lawyer looked frustrated, but resigned. Charles put a hand on her back as they stood up. Outside the courthouse, as I was walking toward the parking lot, Alicia called my name. I turned. She walked over, wiping her face with a tissue. "Please," she said quietly. "Can we talk? Really talk? No cameras, no followers, just us." For the first time in a long time, her eyes looked like they had back when we drove through Atlanta, when she had forgotten about her phone for a whole weekend. "I am in therapy now," she said. "I am working on my phone addiction. I see how bad it got. I see how much I hurt you. I am changing." I believe that she believed it. "That is good," I said. "I hope it helps you." She took a step closer. "We could try again," she said. "Start over. I can be different. I will be present. I know I messed up, but you cannot erase 4 years just like that." I thought for a moment before speaking. "I do not doubt that you will try to be different," I said. "I think you mean it. But I am done." Her face crumbled. "Because of one mistake?" she asked. "Because I cannot be present at our wedding," I said. "If you cannot be present for that, how can I trust you to be present for the boring Tuesdays, the sick days, the hard conversations, the moments nobody sees? Those are the parts of life that actually matter." She did not have an answer. She stood there holding her tissue, shoulders shaking. I felt a pang of sadness, but not regret. "I hope you find what you were looking for," I said. I turned and walked away. Life began to settle into a new rhythm. The lease on the old apartment finally ended 2 weeks ago. Alicia moved back in with her parents while she figured out her next steps. I renewed the lease on my studio for another year. It is small, but it is quiet. No ring light in the corner. No constant notifications. I started picking up new hobbies. On weekends, I walked around the city with a sketchbook, drawing buildings that caught my eye. I joined a local board game night that one of my coworkers invited me to. My family checked in regularly. My mother confessed one afternoon over the phone that she had always liked Alicia, but had been worried about the way every milestone turned into content. "I did not say anything because you seemed happy," she said. But when I saw her pull out that phone at the altar, my heart dropped. Some friends thought I had overreacted and drifted away. The ones who stayed were the ones who understood. Alicia's online presence changed over the following weeks. Her follower count stabilized around 160,000. She still posted, but less frequently. The tone of her content shifted, more reflective, less glossy. She announced that she had taken a part-time job at a retail store to get back to her roots, although it was clear she needed the additional income after losing some sponsorships. She filmed herself folding clothes and ringing up customers, talking about humility and growth. She posted one last video about me, a soft-voiced message addressed to her former partner, in which she talked about forgiveness and learning from mistakes. I did not watch it. Jasmine watched and summarized it for me, saying that Alicia had expressed regret and wished me well. It did not change anything. I started dating again slowly. At a board game night, I met a woman named Tiffany who laughed easily and kept her phone in her bag the entire evening. When we went out for coffee a few days later at a small cafe downtown, she asked about my last relationship. I gave her a condensed version. "We were together 4 years," I said. "We were supposed to get married." She stopped the ceremony during the vows to start a live stream, and I walked out. Tiffany stared at me, blinking. "She did what?" she said. I repeated it calmly. She pulled out her phone, started talking to her followers in the middle of our vows, and I decided that was enough. Tiffany shook her head slowly, then laughed in disbelief. "Good for you," she said. "Seriously, I know that must have been brutal, but good for you for not just standing there." We met for coffee again the next weekend. The vow frames remained the strangest part of the story for me. Mine hung on the wall above my small dining table, a reminder of words I still believed in. They were about presence, respect, partnership, things I still wanted in a future relationship. Alicia's frame stayed in my closet for a while, wedged between a box of winter clothes and an old duffel bag. I would occasionally think about mailing it to her, but that felt like opening a door I had carefully closed. Throwing it away felt wrong too, as if I were erasing a piece of history. One afternoon, my mother suggested something different over the phone. "Donate it," she said. "Take it to a craft store or a thrift shop. Let someone else reuse the frame and the paper. Let them make something new out of it." The idea settled into me. A few days later, I wrapped Alicia's frame in newspaper, took it to a craft thrift store in Charlotte, and left it there without leaving my name. It felt like setting something down I had been carrying too long. That night, I sat at my small table beneath my own vow frame and reread the words. Even without a ceremony to anchor them, they still felt like a promise worth making one day to someone else. My phone buzzed. A text came in from an unfamiliar number. "I do not know if you will read this," it said, "but I am sorry. Truly, I see now what I did and what I lost. I hope you're happy." It was from Alicia. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I put the phone face down on the table. There was nothing left to say. Our story had ended at an altar under an oak tree when she lifted her phone instead of my hands. When people hear bits of what happened, the first question they usually ask is whether I regret leaving the way I did. They imagine an alternate version of the day where I gently took the phone from her hand, smiled for the cameras, and continued the vows as if nothing had happened. They ask if I wish I had gone through with it and try to fix things later. The answer is no. I miss the person Alicia used to be sometimes. The woman who danced barefoot in hotel rooms, who forgot about her phone for an entire weekend in Atlanta, who curled up against me on the couch and fell asleep mid-movie. But that version of her had been fading for a long time, replaced by someone who saw every moment through the lens of how it might perform online. She made a series of choices, big and small, to prioritize her online life over our real one. Stopping our wedding for content was only the loudest of those choices. I made a choice too. I chose to walk away from a life where I would always be competing with a screen, where my private moments could be edited and posted without my consent, where our arguments might become vague posts about unsupportive partners for strangers to comment on. The wedding that never happened cost me $10,450 and 4 years of shared history. In return, it gave me absolute clarity about what I will not tolerate. It taught me that the person standing in front of me has to matter more than the people on the other side of the screen. It reminded me that presence is not something you can fake, even with the best lighting and the most flattering filter. As I sit now in my small, quiet apartment, with my vow frame on the wall and my phone resting silently on the table, that feels like a fair trade. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.